Hello, everyone, and welcome to Inflectra's test automation series called Let's Test Microsoft Dynamics Through the UI, where we will be exploring how to start testing the Microsoft Dynamics product you have. You are joining us for our fourth webinar in this series, and today's topic is how to test Microsoft Dynamics 365 for finance and operations. Today's webinar will be presented by Denis Markovtsev, a principal software developer at Inflectra Corporation. He is one of the creators of Rapise test automation platform. He holds a master's degree in computer science and Ph.D. in mathematics and has been working in the IT industry for the past 20 years in such areas as compilers, development environments, software verification, and testing. My name is Teresa, and I'll be your moderator today. Before I turn it over to Denis, let's cover a few housekeeping issues. Today's webinar will last for about an hour and will consist of both a theoretical and practical part and end with a Q&A session. We ask that you save your questions until that time and use the built-in questions tab to send questions. These will then be read out and answered. Today's webinar will be recorded. In a couple of days, we'll make the webinar recording available on Inflectra's YouTube channel under the playlist called Testing Microsoft Dynamics. Links to each webinar recording will be emailed to you a few days after the live webinar, or you can subscribe to Inflectra's YouTube channel to get notified when new recordings become available. To give you a little bit more information about the webinar series as a whole, Testing Microsoft Dynamics is a 5-part series focusing on testing the Microsoft Dynamics family of products with Rapise. During this 5-part series, you will learn how to start testing the Microsoft Dynamics product you have. We will demonstrate how to bootstrap a testing framework and perform essential test automation tasks. Our presenters will teach you how to organize teamwork and create tests that are easy to enhance and maintain. This series is running in parallel with our webinar series titled UI Automation 101. We suggest that this UI series is an excellent companion to this Microsoft Dynamics series. For those of you not familiar with our test automation webinars, we recommend that you check out our 2 previous series, Test Automation Demystified and Planet Test Automation First Steps, both of which are available on our YouTube channel. Last but not least, as I mentioned earlier, each webinar in the series has a practical part. We will demonstrate the key practical test automation concepts using Inflectra's own platform, Rapise. If you haven't downloaded the tool yet, please visit www.inflectra.com/Rapise and feel free to use Inflectra's 30-day free trial. So with those housekeeping issues out of the way, I'll now turn it over to our presenter, Denis.
Thank you for the introduction, Teresa. Hi, everyone. I'm starting our webinar. Actually, with Rapise, we can test all products from Dynamics family of products. So all Dynamics is 365. And we have some webinars on this topic recorded before. So if you also plan to test Dynamics 365 Business Central, you may find the webinar on our YouTube channel. So it was recorded about a couple of years ago, so maybe it is a bit outdated. This year we started updating our webinars, and that described the latest experience you can get from Rapise in testing Dynamics 365. And we already recorded a webinar about Dynamics 365 for sales and customer service. It was about a month ago, and you can find it on YouTube as well. So today's topic is testing Dynamics 365 for finance and operations. So it's on air. And 1 month from now, we will have the last webinar in this series. And the topic of this webinar will be Unified Service Desk. So if you plan to test this Dynamics as well, so I encourage you to sign up for this webinar as well. So let's start talking about finance and operations. So Rapise cannot write tests for you automatically, but it is a tool that can make your life much easier if you are going to test Dynamics 365 for finance and operation. And some features of Rapise will help you with this. So first of all, Dynamics Rapise provides unified approach for testing desktop, web, and mobile applications, and also API testing. It means that if you learn Rapise once, you may use same skills for testing different products from Dynamics family. So it can be Dynamics 365 or even desktop applications like Dynamics NEF or Dynamics AX. Also, Rapise has codeless mode, and this feature that helps to bring together QA, dev, and business analysts. So around codeless features of Rapise, you may build a team, and business analysts may work on data and scenarios. QA may do implementation of tests, and a few developers may help the team to code some custom functions if needed. Rapise can test a hybrid application. So if your testing scenario involves communication with different application types, maybe not only Dynamics 365 for finance and operation, but also some other components of your bigger system, then Rapise may interact with any kind of application. It may also work with applications that I call hybrid. So for example, Unified Service Desk is a hybrid application. It's a desktop application that contains hosted web controls. So those controls may be Internet Explorer or Chrome parts embedded into desktop application, and Rapise can test such applications. You may integrate Rapise into your test management and CI/CD pipeline. So Rapise has very good integration with Spira test. This is another product from Inflectra, our company. Rapise also has integration with Azure, DevOps, Jenkins, and it provides command line interface, so it can fit any CI/CD pipeline that you may have within your organization. Also, Rapise is framework oriented. It means that if you plan to build a sophisticated test coverage and you have a team of testers, then you may organize your testing efforts in a way that you will have building blocks, modules that can be shared between different test cases. You may have different object repositories, shared object repositories, local object repositories. You may write custom code that may be reused by your tests. So with Rapise, it is relatively easy to create full-featured frameworks. And one of such frameworks will be presented today. Also, Rapise supports data-driven testing. It means that if you want to feed data into your application from Excel files, text files, or even from databases, then Rapise can read this data, process it, and feed into the application. So let's proceed to the framework. We created a framework that is available on GitHub. You may download this framework and use as a starting point for your testing efforts. And this framework is already prepared for Rapise, for Dynamics 365 for finance and operations. So let's get this framework locally first. I'm going to github.com. Inflectra has its own area on GitHub. So it's github.com/Inflectra, and it has many repositories that you may download for free and use for your purposes. And here we have Rapise Dynamics 365 FO, Finance and Operations. We can go here, and this repository has a description of how it was built and how you can use it. It also has descriptions of some custom functions that you also may reuse. To get the framework, you may either use Git to clone it, or you may simply download the zip file. Let's open it. I will copy it from the zip file, and I will put it here into Documents folder. So here it is. And now I'm going to open it in Rapise. So let me close Rapise that is running, double clicking. And this is the framework that I just downloaded from GitHub. Returning to our slides. So for those who are a bit familiar with how Rapise works, this is the high-level architecture of the framework. So the framework has a root test, and this root test contains subtests. Those subtests implement test cases. So here we have test case test 1. The root test contains the global object repository that contains objects that may be used by all the test cases. And it also has common functions that may be used by every test case as well. Every test case has local object repository and has its own RVL file with the test scenario steps that can be recorded. And the root test and tests that implement test cases are linked to test cases inside Spira test. I will demonstrate how to put the framework into Spira test, and we'll show how you can schedule and execute your tests. So now I'm proceeding to the demo, and during the demo, I will show how to, I already showed how to get the framework. So I will demonstrate you the new purchase order test in Dynamics 365 for finance and operations. This test is pretty big. We don't have enough time in this session to build it from scratch. But I will show the main components of this test that you should be aware of. And we will record a part of this test, pretty big part. And we will make sure that steps that we recorded work. We will parameterize and make this piece that we recorded data-driven. And then we will put everything into test management system, into Spira test, and we'll execute our test case. Okay, so here we open the framework in Rapise, and this framework already has 2 test cases implemented, and it also has template test case. If you will decide to create a new test case, you may simply clone the existing test case, provide the name, and then open it into a separate copy of Rapise and do recording of the steps. So I have new purchase order implemented, so I'm going to open this test case. So go into File, Open. This is my framework, new purchase order. Okay, so this is our test that starts new purchase order, enters a few order lines, and then deletes the purchase order. So I think it makes sense to execute it at this point. Before that, I need to do just one thing. The URL of Dynamics instance and username and password should be entered into config Excel file. And when you download the framework from GitHub, these fields are empty. But I have this Excel spreadsheet field on my desktop. So first I'm going to replace it with a file that I have on my desktop. So I will reveal this file in Explorer. And here we go. And this is my file, and I'm going to replace it. Okay, very well. And now I'm ready to execute my test. So while it will be executing, I will explain what it is doing. Okay, so data. Oh, it seems that I forgot to push one data file. So sorry, hold on for a second. I will get it from some other place. Copy. So the data for this test case is taken from Excel spreadsheet. So let's take a look at it. Okay, so now we have sheets with data that is used by our test case. Okay, so I can execute it now. So Rapise may open Dynamics, do the login. You may notice that Rapise opened their browser in incognito mode, and it has specific dimensions. Okay, so what happened here? Oh, okay, so I just forgot to copy some files. I will repair it very soon. Oh. Copy. So I need to update the repository. It is a bit outdated on the GitHub. Here, paste. Oh, okay. So let's switch to another repository that I'm sure has all the files included. New order. Okay, executing it. So we have an internal repository with that works, but it has all the usernames and the URL hard-coded. We cannot publish it. The repository on GitHub was a bit outdated. So the test changes the company. So you probably noticed that Rapise chose USMF company, and now it goes to all purchase orders page. Now it should click new and start the new purchase order. And now Rapise should fill the data for 3 order lines. And the data for these lines is also taken from Excel spreadsheet. So Rapise interacts with the grid, with different cells, adds new lines. So now the order is saved, and using the order ID, Rapise filters the grid. It now should contain just one line, and the order is deleted. Okay, so this is what we have, the implemented test case that works. So here is the RVL implementation of this test. So let's see what we have here. At the beginning, we have the binding to Excel spreadsheet that contains the values. So this is the list of columns from the spreadsheet, and this is the binding to the spreadsheet. So we are getting data from data Excel file from new purchase order sheet. So let's open this data file, new purchase order sheet, and this is the data that is used. The company that we select at the beginning, and then the vendor that we choose, site and warehouse. After that, in our test, we use functions that are available in the framework. One of them is DFO launch. So this is the function that knows how to launch the application. It is using URL, username, and password from config Excel file. So it opens the browser, logs in, makes sure that Dynamics application is loaded. Then we are using function that selects the company. So actually, I may run them one by one. So this is the first one that launches browser, performs the login. So there are several such functions that you may use. So you don't need to do recording of this login operation for your test. So we already have a function that is reliable and works very well. So the second function is selecting the company. I can play it. So in RVL, you can play any part. Just select the lines that you want to play. Right click and choose play selection. So expanding the drop down, finding the company, and then wait until company is loaded. The next step here is using the search line to navigate to the area that we need. So this is actually the fastest way to open the page that is needed. Also, Rapise may work with their menu. So it can use the main menu. Here, if we go to Finance and Operations back, so where is the menu? So here it is. So Rapise may go here, expand the modules, navigate to the module that is needed, and then open the page. But using the search field is a preferred way. It works much faster. Okay, when we are on this page, we click the new button and fill the lines. So I want to bring your attention to one detail here. So all the steps here and objects and actions, everything was recorded. And after recording, we had to modify the sequence of recorded steps a bit for one reason. So the reason was to make the execution stable. The main problem with Dynamics 365 for financing operations is that it is pretty slow, and sometimes it is hard to understand if data is loaded or not. And sometimes when you click on a button or expand a combo, nothing happens, even when you do this as a human. And when manual tester does this, it's usually very easy to see if your action has effect or not, and it's easy to wait a bit longer, and it's easy to click on a button more times if you want to get a specific response from the application. So to have such similar behavior in your automated test, you need to add some steps to your test that help Rapise to wait longer, to repeat some steps if there is no response from the application. And let me show you such steps that we added to this test case. So first of all, what is frequently used is unconditional wait. So for example, here, when we select the vendor, so we are expanding the COM bar, we are clicking on the vendor name in the grid that is shown. And sometimes after click, Dynamics is loading data and it is time-consuming operation. And if you will click somewhere while the data is loaded, the click will have no effect. So this is why here we have this unconditional wait. So we just wait for 2 seconds before we proceed. So this is one of the ways how to make the execution stable. Another one, let me expand this column. Another one is presented here. So this is navigator do click while on screen. And when we use this, it means that we will be clicking on OK button maximum 5 times with the delay between attempts of 1 second until this button disappears from screen. So we will be hitting it until we get the required result. So a navigator is a global object that is available in every Rapise test. So when you have this OK button in your object repository, so you simply use navigator, do click while on screen, and specify your button here. Okay, what else we have? Here is the, actually in RVL, you may split your long test. So if it contains a lot of steps, you may split your steps into sheets with different names. And here on this sheet, line spec, I have steps that fill data into order, so order lines. And this sheet can be executed from the main sheet using, where it is, RVL do play sheet. So the RVL is a global object in Rapise. It has section do play sheet, and here we just specify the sheet name that we want to execute here. Okay, so let's record and implement line spec functionality. So actually, what we will be implementing is a loop that will iterate through data into data Excel file. So here in new purchase order details, we have details for 3 products with the names and discounts that we want to provide for them. And here we have a loop that goes through all the lines on this sheet with all the details, enters the data and clicks on Add Line button to add one more line into the table. So we will implement it from scratch, so you will see how it can be done. I will create a new sheet here. Let's name it Order Lines. Okay, where are we in our test? So let's first reach the point when we want to do this recording. Go into RVL. We want to start new purchase order, and we want to do everything until this point, until we are calling this line spec sheet. So place selection. Okay, now we are at a position when we can start recording. Let me minimize this. Here is Rapise. This is the new sheet that we created, and I start recording. So Rapise connected to Chrome. It is blinking. So I'm expanding the grid with the table with products. Selecting the product by name, I will choose the first one. So you can see that my actions are intercepted. And what's interesting is how Rapise interacts with table. Rapise recorded, click on the cell. First, click on the cell in row 0 and item number column, which is right. And the second action is clicking on the cell in product name column, and the name of the product is Surface Pro. Okay, continue my recording. I want to insert the discount. Oh, here it is, discount, clicking on discount cell, entering discount. Now I want to commit my changes, so I am clicking in the cell to the right of this discount cell. And then I want to go back in this table, so I'm clicking on line number and clicking on Add Line button. So we entered the details for this order, for the first line, and added a new line. So we have everything, all the steps are recorded, so I click Finish. And insert my steps. So let's expand the object column. So you can see that Rapise captured the grid. So the grid object, so the grid that contains order lines, here it is. And what we do is we are clicking on cells and selecting their product from the grid that will pop up. And also in one place we are entering the text into discount field and adding a new line. So let's see how it works. So I'm going to delete the line that we just added. So remove the line. And let's test that recorded steps work. I may execute just this sheet, right click on the sheet name and choose play this sheet. Okay, so it works, and now we can parameterize it and grab data from data Excel file. So to do this, I will simply copy the binding, and so actually all this area highlighted in yellow, and I will explain what I have here. So first, we have a data table defined here that defines column names, item, and discount. Here we have a binding to Excel file, and here is the sheet from that we are getting our data or the details. And also here we have a couple of variables defined that we will be using in our loop. The first one, line number, will indicate the line in what will be adding order details. And here is the row count. So let's first calculate, get the number of rows in the data table. So here we have 3 rows. How we will know that? We can get this information. This data is an object now in RVL, so I may write data here in object column. And this object has get row count action. So I can scroll to it and choose it. And I want the result of this get row count in my variable that will hold row count. So here, after action, I may say that output of the action should go to variable, and variable name is row count. Okay, and now I can do parameterization of this part. So I want to get the data from my Excel file, and also I want to interact with the specific row. So here I have a do-click cell, and the row number is 0. So here I will change the type of row to variable, and as a variable I will use line number. Here as the product name I will use data, and I will read data from column item. Okay, then we go to discount. We need to click on the line with number, and here where we have 5, we need to enter data from our data table, so choosing discount, and then we are clicking on a couple of more cells. Here I also change to line number, okay, so it is now parameterized. And now I will wrap this into loop. So I am selecting all the lines, right-clicking, and choosing wrap selection into loop. And Rapise generates the loop around this sequence of steps. And this loop should use map, so data table, and this data table name is data. Okay, we need to add just a couple of more lines here. First of all, when we are adding a new line, we need to increase our line number variable. So I am adding one more line here. And here I may tell that I want a variable increment. So here from the drop down, I may select increment. I will be incrementing line number variable, and I will be incrementing it by number by 1 actually. And also, when you are adding lines here into this table, when you fill the last line, you do not need to add a new line. So when there is an empty line, it's not possible to save the order. So we need to add lines every time except when we are filling the last line. So this is why I will wrap this line into a conditional statement. So right-click in it and wrapping selection into conditional. So here is my condition. Condition should be changed to param1 is less than param2. Param1, it is our line number, and param2, here, if we should execute this line for all lines except the last one, here we need to use our row count variable, which is defined on line 20, and we need to decrease it by 1. So here I will use row count minus 1. And one more thing we need to add here is when we are adding line, it usually takes time for new line to appear. So we need to add unconditional wait here. About 5 seconds is enough. So we now have the piece that enters all the lines, and we may execute it and see that it works. So let's delete this line. Okay, and run this sheet. I noticed one thing, so let's scroll to the right. And if we are looking at where we have those discounts, here we have that, I see that discount for the second line was not added. It means we are doing things too fast, and we need one more delay after we choose the item. So let's go to our sheet. So after we choose the product and before we are clicking on discount, we need a small delay. So I am adding it. So now we have a filling of those order lines implemented. Okay, and the next step is to put our test framework into Spira test and execute it. So I'm closing Chrome. Also, since I'm reusing the test, I need to do one thing. I need to detach it from, oh, it is okay. Okay, so here is the Spira. And here, now I'm going to create a couple of test cases. Here I will have one test case for the whole framework, Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations. And one test case for our new purchase order. Okay, and here in my framework, I need to switch to the whole framework. Here it is. So let me check something. Okay. And I am saving it to Spira. So here is the button on the toolbar. I am selecting the test case 365. Okay, so what's happening? I already saved this framework once. Let's try one more time. And in Spira. Okay, hold on for a second. Let me quickly fix it. Basically, I need those files. Except this, copy, and I will put them into framework that should be definitely updated on GitHub. Paste. Okay, and going back to the framework that I downloaded from GitHub. And now I'm saving it to Spira. Okay, so it will create the repository. Default selection of files is okay. Now I'm switching back to the test case and saving it to Spira as well, linking it to another test case, new purchase order. All files are already in Spira, so nothing to upload. Okay. Now let's see if we have Rapise launcher running. So this is the component of Rapise that is connected to Spira, and identifier for this machine is nightly. And now I can close Rapise, and to execute on this host, I need to create a test set. So go into test sets, new test set, purchase orders, saving. And here I need to add my test case in test cases section. And I need to define that I want to execute it on host with ID nightly. And I want to execute it right now. So saving this test set. And here, Rapise Launcher in a couple of seconds will query information from Spira. Now it downloads files of the test framework to a temp folder and starts execution. So once execution is completed, we will see the report in Spira. So when execution will be completed, we will proceed to Q&A session. So if you have any questions, feel free to write them into questions pane. And you may notice that dynamics for finance and operations is pretty unpredictable in response time. So sometimes it is very slow, sometimes it is fast. And this is why sometimes we need to add those sleeps and repeat some actions to make execution stable. But recording is reliable, so the locators captured for objects that we use during recording are pretty reliable. Okay, so execution is successful, and we can go to our test set, switch to test runs tab, refresh it, and here is our execution report. I can go inside and see the execution details. If there is any error, we will have the red line here, and if screenshots are turned on, we will see the screenshots here as well. All right, so thank you for attention, and we can proceed to our questions. Teresa?
Thanks so much, Denis. I do see we have a couple of questions. I think our colleague Alexei will join us for those questions.
Yeah, thanks, Teresa. Thanks, Denis. Great presentation. We have two questions so far. We may have more. So the first question we have now is, hello, I wonder what are the software editor tools used in the demo session?
What software editor tools
what are the software/editor tools used in the demo session?
So in the demo session, we are using Rapise, and for editing Excel files, Rapise has built-in Excel file reader and editor. So this is what is good about Rapise, is that you don't need to have Microsoft Office to be installed on the machine to work with Excel files. In Rapise, you may create spreadsheets, modify them, read them, and write them. Also, if we need to work with some custom code, Rapise has built-in editor for JavaScript, and not only editor but also a debugger. And it seems this is all. So we have RVL editor and JavaScript editor. So Alexei, maybe you will add something here.
I have nothing to add. So everything is done in Rapise. So we're talking only about Rapise. We don't use any other tools. They're not required for doing the tests. Okay. The next question we have is how can I verify the number of order line purchase order line items added?
Good question. So yeah, so far what I showed is how we can repeat some interactions, but yes, what to do if you want to grab some data from screen and somehow use it, check it, and verify something. So here in this test, we have one place where we are reading purchase order number, and this part is using custom function as well. So let me reach this place where we are working with this data. So opening the table with the orders. So Rapise may read properties of elements that are displayed on screen. So let's open one of orders. Okay, I'm opening first order, for example. And here we have the label that has order number information, but this is just one element on the screen. So there is no element that contains just the number. So what we can do is we can read this, the whole string, and then we can split it into parts and then receive the order number. And this is where we are using custom function. So here you may see it is written in JavaScript. It is getting the inner text from header title object. So header title object is here in the object tree. We may flash it, so you may see that it is the label that contains, yeah, so it was highlighted. What we do here, we are getting the whole title, then we use JavaScript to split the string using semicolon, and then we get the first part, and this is our order number. Another way is, for example, if we have this table with 3 lines. So how to check that after we enter it on the information, we have 3 lines in this table. We can easily record this step. So let's go to a new sheet. I may start recording. Rapise connects to Chrome. I may put mouse over the element that I want to verify in some way, and then I just click Ctrl+1 on the keyboard, and Rapise shows me the properties of this object. This is the table object, and it should have row count property. So I may simply click it, hit OK, click Finish. And in Rapise, we now have the step that reads the row count from our table. This is our table, and compares this row count with 3. So if it is 3, then we can proceed. So all lines were entered. If it is different, then something definitely went wrong. Okay, Alexei, do we have more questions?
Okay, so we are out of questions. We have no more questions.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Denis, for today's presentation. We'll send out an email in a couple of days with a link to the recording of the webinar. We hope that you'll join us for the last webinar in this series, and that one's titled How to Test Microsoft Dynamics Unified Service Desk through the UI like a Pro, and it's scheduled for Wednesday, June 24th at 10 a.m. If you're interested in the Companion UI Automation 101 series, please plan to attend the next webinar, 5 Ways to Use Rapise Frameworks. And that's scheduled for June 10th, 10 a.m. in a couple of weeks. So thanks to Alexei and thanks to Denis.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you, Teresa.
And thanks for watching.